Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a great pleasure for me to introduce today's speaker, Kathy Castagna, whose presentation, Power and Difference, a Framework for Change, is the second in the series sponsored by the Sunday Forum and the DEIB Committee. Kathy spent the past 30 years designing and delivering workshops on issues of power and difference. She's the founder and consultant for Opening Doors, a personal and professional journey, which I was very fortunate to attend a previous version, I think, more than 20 years ago when I worked for New York State Migrant Education. Kathy's passion for justice work started early. She grew up working class in an Italian family as the daughter and granddaughter of Italian immigrant farm workers, and was the first person in her family to go to college. There she began to understand the ways that her worldview was different than people from different class backgrounds. This understanding led her to the diversity and justice work to which she has devoted her life. Kathy recently retired from Cornell University after 23 years as a senior extension associate with the Cornell Migrant Program. I'm going to skip a brief. She also serves as the Education Committee Coordinator for Surge Rochester, Standing Up for Racial Justice. And let me just welcome Kathy.
Granny didn't share is that we've been long friends for long, I don't know how many years, Granny, but a long. You work with Migrant Ed, right?
Yeah.
So my job with Migrant Ed was to be the multicultural specialist. So I would go around the state working with different migrant education programs to train them on multicultural education. And Grania was such a champion for social justice also. And another person I'm here in support of is my very good friend, Windsor Wade. And Windsor, you know, just and I have been working together for many years, and he invited me to come here, and I am here. So for the people who are here who are not in the circle, I'm going to invite you into the circle so that we could all be connected. And those of you who are still working on technology, are you going to come in and
interrupting
no, will you be part of the circle or no?
No,
Okay.
if somebody else to go.
Okay. Okay, fine. So for the people on Zoom, welcome also. During COVID, I got very familiar with Zoom. I told my colleagues, there's no way we can do this work on Zoom, but we did successfully. We ran many workshops on Zoom. So come on in, we're just getting started. Find yourself a nice comfy seat and we'll get going. So I am part of an important movement that we call the Opening Doors Institute, and I wrote a curriculum literally 30 years ago. And you know, you write a curriculum. I was passionate because I had just come off my master's, and in my master's, which was the perceptions of white teachers and African-American parents about each other. And the data I was collecting made me sob. I was truly heartbroken to see the divisions that we live in because it was affecting our children, right? And I was driven, literally, to try to figure out how to remedy that. So in my visionary self, I just started to create a workshop where people could come together across difference safely, doing no harm to each other, but learning from each other. We had superintendents and students. We had teachers, we had health workers, we had lawyers, we had everybody from throughout our care system coming together to figure this thing out. And these workshops just kept going on while I was at Cornell. The state education department kept sponsoring us to do this in school districts of other places. And fast forward, I retired and I thought, well, that's the end of that, right? I'm retired, we're not gonna do this anymore. But people kept asking for these workshops, right? And so there's a team, we have a national team now of people that over all these years got trained to be facilitators in this workshop. So I'm honored to represent that team here today. We have newly formed this institute because we are obviously no longer with Cornell, and we decided let's just go off on our own and create this institute. We just did our first workshop in Michigan following COVID, and I'm like, well, let's see, it's 2 years since we've done one, because those are not workshops, the 3-day retreat that you can do on Zoom. Those are workshops you have to be in person. So we did one in Michigan, and I thought, I don't know, let's see how it goes. COVID, who knows what happened? And what happened was the participants were like, can I be a facilitator? This is so powerful. I want to be a part of your team, right? So our team is just moving forward and starting up these 3-day retreat workshops again. And this is a flyer that you can take over there, just telling you where to go to register if you decide. We normally don't do anything for an hour, 3 hours, or sometimes even a day, because this work requires a lot of being respectful to the participants so that you are honored through the process, right? This isn't something that should be done in a hurried way. It isn't urgent. The issues are urgent, but how we learn it should never be urgent, right? So I'm giving you the slightest little toe in the water for what we do in a 3-day workshop. And I'm honored that you're here. And what I'd love to do now that you're all sitting down, and there's some people not in our circle, David, you have to be there, but David, can you come over? So I love circle.
I'm gonna have to leave
Oh, you have to leave?
in the middle of it.
Oh, okay, but it's fine. That's fine. If you want to. So I love circles. I'm sorry. I love connection. I love circles. I love feeling a part of something. So we're gonna, for the sake of time, because we started a little late, just go around and say your name. I at least want your name present in this circle. We'll start here.
Greg Partridge.
Okay.
Done.
Carolyn.
David.
David's happy.
Sam.
Hi, Sam.
No.
He's not Sam.
Jim.
Oh, he's a jokester in the group. We always have a fun, right? I love it. Hi, Sam. Sorry. Mary. Hi, Mary. Becky. Hi. Marie. Marie's my cousin.
I'm Sam.
You are Sam.
He's Sam.
We only have a Sam here. Great. Okay.
Bill.
Bill and Joan, right?
Jim.
Jim.
Sally.
Ed. Ed. All right.
Dan. Helen. Becky. Elaine. Graham.
Right. And
Lori.
Lori. Welcome. And we will get started. You've met me. I've sort of met you. I'd love to know much more about you, but that will have to come another time because we're just going to move right into what we're doing. So the clicker is here. This technology thing has been very interesting. Grania said I was raised working class. One of the benefits of being raised working class is that you problem solve everything because you don't have stuff. And if something breaks, you figure out how to fix it. You never throw it out. And I'm living with a no-class husband who doesn't understand that all the time. And so we have little discussions about that. Okay, so we did our introductions and I introduced you just a little bit to Opening Doors. I said it was 3-day. What makes us unique is that when we do an understanding of what we're all living in and how to fix it, we also create a vision, a powerful vision for what we can be. We don't just muck around in how bad it all is. We also use our radical imagination to figure out what it could look like, right? that is kind of unique because people often think, well, we're just changing places. The oppressed will be the oppressors, and now we're going to just be treating each other the way we've treated each. And that is all fear-based, right? So our work is no shame and blame. We start it with the principle, no harm will be done to anybody. And we live by that principle. That's why it takes 2 years to learn how to facilitate, because the facilitators have to be ready to hold each person. We're like vessels. So today we're just going to give you one, as I said, toe in the water for a framework we use in our workshop. And so that's basically it. We're going to do a couple of activities. Hopefully we have time to do 2, at least 1. And I'm going to invite the Zoom people to also participate in these as much as possible. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So in order for any group to ever come together to talk about these issues, there has to be a framework of agreements, right? So I put this up here. I know it's a short workshop, but you know what? We can't do this without that. I went into a high school one time and I did a workshop with kids, and they said to me, oh my God, we never talk about these things. And they said, we feel so good. We did a whole day. We're still liking each other and everything's working. And I said, the working agreements have something to do with that. So here's some that I put together. I don't know what those L stuff is, but okay. This is a diversity issue. Computers don't always talk to each other in ways that we'd like. So somebody could just call them out as I'm doing this. So we could just yell them out.
Confidentiality.
Okay, Elaine, do the next one.
Okay to pass. Being comfortable with unfinished conversations. Feelings are information.
Okay to pass, if that one's hard to read. It's listen for and observe for understanding. Is that okay?
That's, yeah, sure. Invite humility. Cultivating curiosity.
Respect for what others share.
Experiment with suspending judgment and knowing.
Create a safe space. Brave space.
Thank you. So up there, the question,
Kathy, since we only have one working mic, that's not gonna get captured on the recording.
oh, what they did.
So as much as you can talk,
I got it. Okay, confidentiality, okay to pass, being comfortable with unfinished conversations. Feelings are information, listen and observe for understanding, invite humility while cultivating curiosity, respect for what others share, experiment with suspending judgment and knowing, and create a safe space, a brave space. Guess you can't hear it too much. So these are in answer to the question, what do you need to feel supported and challenged during this session? If we were in a longer session, you would give us those, right? I had to give those to you because we're in a short session. But in our longer sessions, I just did one at Cornell last week, and it was so beautiful to hear all the different agreements that people wanted. So it was great. So let's go back to this slide. One of the things, and I'm going to be talking about things that trip us up in trying to figure this whole mess out that we're in. One of the things that trip us up is that we don't have a common language by which we understand what we're dealing with, right? So we always start with a framework of a common language. So then we can talk to each other and understand what we're saying. Again, free of blame and shame. Just understanding that in this framework I'm going to share with you, it was something that was imposed on us. No one in this room created it. And what has come about, and this is another sticking point that we're in right now, is that we think different, that how we're different is really the problem. Guess what? It's not the problem. Being different is beautiful. Look at my garden. Oh my God, if my garden was all one flower, it would be horrible. It is so beautiful right now because it's all these different things. So difference is never the problem. But what is the problem, you might say? The problem is that social systems assign status to the groups we're members of. And so when they do that, I'm going to go back, sorry. when they do that, we're mucking around with how we're different. But in truth, we all learned a pecking order, a hierarchy of how we are different from each other, and not just different, but where is our place on that difference, right? Which is what I saw very clearly being raised working class, going off to college and being with people from different class backgrounds. It's like, wow, I am different, but I'm not only different, I am feeling less than, right? That's the problem. And it's not by bad people at all. Nobody's being bad. There's no good, bad box. We'll talk more about the good, bad box we inherited. I'm going to talk about it now. The good, bad box we inherited is horrible. Because all of us, and all the research I read about bias, implicit bias, all this stuff, people try really hard to always be in the good box. Of course, right? And if you think there's only two boxes, you're good or you're bad, everybody's gonna fight like heck to say, oh no, not me, not me. I'm in the good box. I had a friend in high school who was black, right? Or I know, I went to an event recently in the black community, or I don't treat women like that. I wash dishes, right? So all that stuff is because we think there's two boxes. And we're going to defend ourselves like crazy. All the research about how we undo what we inherited is that we're on a continuum. There's no two boxes, folks. It's only us who inherited something we did not ask for. And now we're trying to figure out how to get out of it. Because it doesn't work for any of us. So we're going to use our framework on power to use two different labels that we'll call the dominator model, which just describes what we inherited around power and how that model, what has that model done to us? We're going to think about what does it look like? How does it feel to be in a model of hierarchy and power, right? And the vision for change we call the partnership model. So what we want to do is not just dismantle dominator. We want to create something new and different that is going to honor all of us, right? So in the dominator model, it's all about power over. Now in the partnership model, it's about power too, but not power over. In the dominator model, we are empowering each other to be the best we can be. We're not comparing. We're not competing all the time. We're just supporting each other. Now, those arrows are our lifelong journey. I wish it could be an overnight event. I wish I could watch a movie or read a book and say, oh yeah, I got this now. I will go to my grave loaded with dominator model dynamics because it was so big in all of our lives. So what we're about is looking at these dynamics at every level simultaneously. Pretty complex, but you know what? We're smart enough to work in complexity. And I need to say that if we only do it at one level, like the individual, we're not going to do it. We can just go around changing ourselves forever, but there's a system in place that's tripping us up. So if I could say, you know what? I don't agree with housing policies that are discriminating, but I'm a part of it because I don't even know it. Because that's a part of the dominator system. We're meant not to see it. It's meant to be invisible. So I can think of myself as good intention doing everything for social justice, but be a part of a system, whether it be in the organization, societal, and my relationships. I could look around and say, you know, I'll be friends with people who are different from me. But there's nobody in my neighborhood, and there's nobody in my city, or there's nobody in my town. I just did a workshop with a group, and people kept saying, my town is all white. And I would say, well, why? And there was no history passed down as to how that happened. It wasn't happenstance. It was by intention. So this person who wants to be the good person in our society doing the right thing is tripped up because of all the things that have been put in, right? So here we are. The good news is that we can get out of this when we do all four things. We have to be thinking all four all the time. So, and I'm going to give you an example of my life really quick. As you heard, I'm raised in Italian neighborhood. I thought everybody in the world was Italian. I didn't know, till I got out of my neighborhood. And then I realized much later in life, as I was studying, doing my graduate work, the horrors that Columbus did to indigenous people. And I again sobbed and said, what? And my group is being set up against them because we honor Columbus. And I understand why we did it way back when we were feeling less than, but we kept doing it and hurting people in our action. So changing, first I had to get to know indigenous people. I had to get closer to Italians who believed the way I did. And then we started looking at organizations in our community that could help us. And then we went to city council and said, we need to change this, right? So it was all levels. And that's what it takes. Okay, so we also work from a premise of 3 conditions for change, and here they are. We have to feel a certain dissatisfaction with the status quo. The status quo is the dominator model, sad to say, as we inherit. And we need to know it to be dissatisfied with it. We need to talk about it all the time. Wait, I want to go back for a minute. The dominator model also teaches us to not talk about it. And to be disconnected from each other. That's why I do circles. We have to look each other in the face and talk about it. Because if we don't talk about it, it's doing exactly what it wants to do. We just keep it all going. So I honor your community for inviting me in to have this brave conversation, because that's the only thing that's going to stop it. Right? That's the only thing. So, and in the workshops, we spend a lot of time talking about how it feels right now. Look at all the outcomes we're seeing in our society, because we're treating, by the way, the earth the way we treat each other. And we are seeing so many mental health things going on. There's a cost we're paying that we don't often see and associate with this. And I said earlier, so we have to know where we're going. So we need a vision for what it can look like outside of that. And because none of us were reared in that, it really does take an imagination, because we've never had our experience truly being in a real partnership. We work together sometimes, but it's not always partnership, because the default will be dominator, because we go back to those same behaviors over and over again. And I work with a group of people who catch each other on doing those behaviors. It's like, wait a minute, is that in partnership, Kathy? And I go, oh, dude, there I am again, right? So the third thing is the process for getting there. And again, that's a skill build, that's a engagement over a long time with people who you can work with and support each other to create a process. In a way, you're starting I mean, all of you have been on this journey for a long time, but as a collective here with the forums that you're doing this fall, is to create a process. You're creating a process because you know you want something different. You wouldn't be here today if you didn't want that. So let's take a look at what this model really is. We're going to just examine the dominator. I love doing partnership, but we don't have time for that. So we're just going to walk us through what a dominator model looks like. I said it was power over. And a table for dominator, by the way, is that, because there are groups that are sitting at the head of the table who set the standard, who decide what's good, what's not, what good hair is, what bad hair is, what anything about people, whether you're a woman or, you know, working class, whatever, we're at the table. All the groups are at the table, but we're not there equitably. So when people say, well, we have inclusion, we have people here, but if you talk to the people who are the small dots, they will always, most of the time, say to me anyway, and maybe to some of you, I don't feel like I belong. I'm there, but there's not a belonging. And so we're working to change that table. And if I was doing partnership, the partnership table would be a circle. We would all feel like we belong. Now, in the dominator model, we are taught roles. The roles are not us because we come into the world wanting to be truly connected to each other. I walk around the grocery store sometime and those babies will seek me out with their eyes. Right? They're like, hi, person, I'm here. And I'm like, oh my God, that's who we all were, right? We all want connection, true connection. It doesn't matter what we look like, whether we're tall or short or whatever. It doesn't matter what our hair looks like. It doesn't matter. Those kids want to connect, and we all wanted that too. However, when we come into a dominator model, we're taught to be a certain thing. We're taught to behave in certain ways based on all the learning that the people before us inherited, right? And it's a socialization process. We all know this now. It's all been researched. We know what this looks like. So the roles, Beverly Tatum, who writes wonderful books, she describes the roles like this. You're born and you're put on one of those walkways like in the airport. You know those walkways? You just get on. You don't have to do anything. It's going to take you toward dominating. All of our institutions, all the people around us are teaching us something. And it's moving us toward that. Now, our job is to first notice that we're on a walkway and to say, oh my God, I'm on this walkway, right? And then in our dominant identities to say something's wrong. And in our excluded identities, because we all have both, we're on both sides, we also notice something's wrong. Often we notice something's wrong a lot more from that side. The dominant side is meant to be more invisible, not to know how people in the excluded group are feeling and what's really happening, right, to them. But if you're in the excluded side, you have to know the dominant to survive. You can't not know it. My father, my sister and I were eating together the other night. We were joking about my dad. My dad ruled the roost in our house. And if he sat at the table and there was a utensil missing, he would not tell us. We had to figure it out. He just gave a look. You all know, right? Okay. So in that, he was an agent, and we've all been learning how to be agents in many of the groups we're part of that are done by society's definition. Now, the good news is that all the research over the last 30 years on identity development tell us that there is a journey to undo that learning. It's not about bad agents are not bad people. We're all people who learned certain things. And our job now is to unlearn them and learn new things. Now, even the word ally is a little outdated because ally, it's like, well, you could be, but you got a long ways to go yet, So we're using new words to also describe what we become when we unlearn the agent role. And it's a role, it's not us, we didn't ask for it. It is a role. Now, on the excluded side, we internalize a role of victim. Now, it doesn't mean I walk around going, oh, I'm so victimized. No, not at all. I just internalize a role that I'm not good enough, that I don't know enough, that I'm not smart enough. Right? So in victim, there's often a place where the people who feel like they don't belong don't say a word. Because we've internalized that, oh, they're not going to hear me. They don't care how I feel. So we start talking in victim. Now, our journey in victim is also, we have a job to do when we're in the excluded side, and that is to become empowered, because you know what? We came into the world powerful. It's not about somebody else giving us power. It's reclaiming the power that we had when we came. And what we would do is constantly set up environments for other people to become empowered. We don't set up environments where people feel less than. We don't talk to people in a way that makes them go back into their victim, right? That's like 3 days, that right there. Those two arrows and that's 3 days to just get started. and we examine, what does it really look like to be an ally? What does it really look like if we're empowered, right? So that is the framework by which we have a common language. So I don't ever say that someone's sexist or racist or classist. I don't say that. That's putting them in the bad box. I might say, wow, that person learned a lot about sexism. You know, they don't even realize how much is internalized. We could work together now. We have to figure this out, right? Because those other words really put people in boxes of good and bad, and it stops our growth. So on the walkway, I'm going to go back to the walkway. When we start to see what's going on, it could be coming to a workshop, it could be having a friend, it could be watching a movie, it could be reading a book, it could be anything that says, wow, something's wrong, right? Now what do? I'm on this walkway, it's taking me forward, and everybody's saying, come on, keep going, don't, you know, because I wanted to stop and go, oh my God, I want to do this, right? But what happens when we turn around on a walkway? What's going to happen to us?
Run into other people.
Exactly. We run into other people and then they're mad at us, right? What's wrong with you? Come on, get with the program. Why are you always asking all those questions? It's good enough. Don't get in trouble. You know, Marie came in and she said, are you causing trouble again? I'm like, I hope I'm not causing trouble. So you know, when we're on that walkway, we're meant to stay in our roles. That's it. It's again, not good or bad people. I love my father who had learned so much racism and he kept trying to impose it on me, which was hurtful to me. I didn't realize how hurtful it was, but I love him. He was my dad. You know? Okay, this now, Sally, we can pass this out. This is hard to see, so Sally has a handout that she's going to bring to you. And we call this our identity map because, as I said, we're all on it. So I want you to just look at the terms we use here. And you're never, I mean, it doesn't matter if we digest this all right now. There's no way in the time we have. But I would like you to at least take a good look at it. And this chart changes all the time. I think it changes all the time. Why do you think we have to rename things and put other things in? What do you think is going on out in the society right now that makes us have to change? Because people don't like that we're changing the terms. Yeah.
Is it possibly that, there is a force to make the terms that we're familiar with toxic?
Yes, there is. So we always have to be careful with terms that are being thrown around because some of them get redefined
Yeah.
by others, right? And so there's this whole redefining right now and labeling people who have a consciousness as woke. Okay, you've very all heard that, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing that we did with 10 years ago with political correct, right? So there's a way that once you put a name, one word on a whole group of people, you can now define them. And Dominator loves that. It loves it. Simple, easy, no complexity, no having to think about anything. You got a word? Let me put all those people in that box and I'll tell you who they are. That's why we're in the divisions we're in, because we keep labeling people like that. So these also change because when we have a greater consciousness for whatever reason, even though I had been learning about Indigenous people, I wasn't really close to Indigenous people for a long time. Once I got close to Indigenous people, I said to my colleagues, we can't just have racism there. We have to also have settler colonialism. Because that is a unique way in which Indigenous people were excluded, right? So this changes. That was just added a year ago. So when we become more conscious of things and how people want to be labeled and talked about, the words that we use, I have to say we're probably learning a lot lately about gender identity and how we're talking about each other in terms of gender. Oops, that wasn't supposed to be that. So, and I just want to invite all of you to look at the adultism line. This is a really important ism that we also don't talk about. This is the one where we all get to be on the excluded side, and we were on the excluded side for many years. And it's where we got this socialization without our permission. So it was a form of oppression as young people that we got this. So that's a really key oppression. And it's also one that we all share, no matter what group we're part of. We were all young people at one point, and so it's one that we don't often look at a lot. And in order for dominator to be understood, we have to understand adultism. Okay, so what I'm going to invite you to do, because I want to have a good question and answer period. I want you, if you have, well, okay, we usually circle the groups we're part of, but I'm going to skip that. When you go home, I invite you to circle all the groups you're part of. But now I want you to just look at your map, because no two people's maps are alike. We've all had different life experiences, and we were given status and not given status in different groups we're a part of, right? So what I'm going to invite you to do is just look at it and have a chance to think about, or if you have a pencil, you want to jot down, what's a feeling you have about it? When you think of this being you, because I'm not giving you the information about how this plays out. That's your experience, right? And in the Opening Doors workshop, we do a lot of storytelling, a lot. We talk about what it meant to be someone who is targeted by ableism, or what it meant to be someone who is a target of homophobia. We also learn what it's meant and what the cost has been to be white and to be male. What is the cost of that? We tell our stories because they're important stories from our heart. So does anybody have one or two impressions? Just when you look at your own identity map.
I can pass the mic.
Oh, that would be great. If somebody has just, and because we're on Zoom, and we're recording, just, you don't have to take a great leap here. I wanted to turn the recorder off for this part, and I was told that would be hard. So you just have to give us some reaction. I want a few reactions.
Would you rather I go?
Oh, that's a good idea. So we'll hear you. Sorry, Zoom people, you won't, and recording won't. But a few impressions. Thoughts, feelings. I like feelings first, but thoughts will do.
Well, that I'm all over the place.
Oh, you're all over the place. You're on both sides.
Yeah.
So you have experience with both having status and not having status in a hierarchical system. Okay, thank you, Peg. That's really important. It's really important to understand we're on both sides. And by the way, the both-sidedness helps us to understand about other groups, because a lot of the research people like Peggy McIntosh, who did work on privilege, started with, oh my God, men have so much privilege. And she started writing all the ways men have privilege. And then she stopped and said, geez, I'm white. I wonder if people of color realize that I have privilege. Then she started writing all the things she thought she had privilege for as a white person. So what's important about that is that we can learn from our excluded group what it means to be in a dominant. And we examine that. More. Thank you, Peg. That's really important. Granian.
I look at this and I realize I'm in mostly dominant groups. And so white people owning class, standard English, earliest European immigrants, well, not adults, people with disabilities, Christian, heterosexual, formal education.
So what does all that tell you, Granian?
So all that tells me that I have a lot of work to do and have had a lot of work to do to transform, I guess,
Great word.
my thinking, because I grew up with a great deal of classism. I hate to use the word, but classism in that my parents had money, they, you know, a lot of different things. They grew up themselves in what I would call upper middle class environment. So all that gets translated down
And, I had a lot to learn. My life hasn't succeeded as well as some, but I mean, I think that journey is sort of all the time in a way, particularly when you're working alongside indigenous people, or in my case, farm workers who are mostly indigenous. So,
Thank you, Grania. So the journey only can start with what Grania just described. I see now how I was giving power. She didn't badmouth her parents. That's what her parents knew. That's what they taught her. That's it, right? So I really appreciate that, because that is where we have to start our work, right? We started with understanding this was not created by us. And it wasn't created by the people who taught us this. And it wasn't created, by the people who taught them that. It's been going on a long, long time. And it can stop. Some people who are on that walkway trying to keep us moving on there keep saying, oh, come on, it's always been like this. It will always be like that, right? That's not true. It hasn't always been like this, and it doesn't always have to be like that. So what we're going to do now, yes,
Can I just have-
Elaine.
So I haven't heard you use the word privilege,
Oh, just with Peggy McIntosh.
and yet, that's what this is,
Thank you.
except that privileged people so often don't recognize.
Right.
their privilege.
Exactly. So thank you for bringing that up, because there are two dynamics when we're in the dominant side, and there's two for the excluded. So Elaine's helping us. I was getting a little urgent on time, so I didn't say this, but okay. So on the dominant side, we have two major dynamics that we have to uncover. One is privilege. Again, meant not to see it, meant not to know it. When I ask that question in workshops, boy, people struggle. How have you had privilege even in the last week? Oh, do we have to do the last week? Yes. No, I want to do the last month. Okay, you could do the last month, right? But recognizing your privilege is a really key thing, because it doesn't want us to know that we have it. We think it's available to everybody. Doesn't everybody get to bring 10 items in the dressing room and not get questioned? Or doesn't everybody just get to walk around and write a check and not get questioned, or whatever? Like, we have no idea that it's only some people that get this, right? So privilege is really important. The other piece that I've been naming a lot is pain, because there's a cost and a pain to being here. That's also meant to be invisible and not talked about. And so we have to examine those two dynamics. On the excluded side, our two dynamics are, one, survival. And what do people start doing when they're in survival? Not good, not thriving. It's just surviving. And they get in the way of our full humanity and our full growth. The other dynamic on the excluded side is internalized oppression, believing the misinformation we're told about ourselves. I would not be here today if I didn't have allies from the dominant group who told me I was smart enough. All my identities told me I wasn't. I was female, Italian, working class, come on. All the messages were, just go clean houses like your mom. Right? So internalizing the misinformation and then start acting on it, like believing that we can't do things, right? So that's a whole nother dynamic in our excluded side. Thank you, Elaine. You sent me down that road of talking about those two important. Now we want to think of the dominant side as only privileged, right? And I worry about that a little bit, because we are privileged and we also have a cost. So I always want to not call the dominant side just the privileged, because we also have a cost. I think we could do this. So what I want us to do is actually talk to each other for a minute about the cost. And this is what it looks like. This is what we just did. We self-reflected. Now And this is gonna be done in a circle where one listener shares, the other shares, and then it's all confidential. But here's a question. How does it feel to know that you've been conditioned into the dominator model without your permission? Nobody asked you, right? So this is how we're gonna do it. I'm worried about just talking to the person next to you because that's usually someone you know really well. So this is how we're gonna do it. We're gonna go 1, 2, 1, 2, okay, 1, 2.
2.
Okay.
You were saying one,
Dan, stop it. Okay, so the people on Zoom, and I love that we're an equal number here. So the ones I want you to come up first. And you're gonna actually form a circle around all this equipment. No, let's see, yes, you can. All right, you're gonna form a circle around the equipment. And you're gonna face out. When you're in the circle, you're gonna face like this. Okay, that's good. One's up here, just
One's
one,
up here.
just one, just one. Face out next to each other. I love it. Okay. Now, we could broaden this a little bit. Come over here, Grania, and come over here, so that you're closer to Grania.
Is a 1.
I know, nobody asked for it. You got it. Okay, so number 2, you circle around them, facing them. All right, so you get next, you're gonna face one person here.
I'll face you.
Okay, face one person. Number 2 is you're circling around number 1, circle around number 1.
Yeah.
Okay, circle around number 1.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody should have a person in front of them. Okay, circle around number 1, we have one person sitting, so.
Bill needs a
Marie,
person.
you pick Jim, you just stand there. All right, now everybody else. And we're already dealing with complexity. Okay, so now I want you to move to the right. The outside circle, move 1 to the right.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Because I don't. Marie moves. Well, that's not very good. Okay.
Yes, I know.
I want you to introduce yourself to that person with just pure joy that you have another human standing. After you introduce yourselves and you're just so happy to be with each other, the inside circle is going to start sharing the answer to that question. How does it feel, not think, feel to know that you have learned and been imposed, the dominator model has been imposed on you without your permission? I want you to just take, I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to share, then I'm gonna call time, and the outside circle is gonna share the same answer. Okay, you go.
So you can hear. Oh, perfect. You can cut it on the board. What's, can you see it now? How how does it feel? How does it feel to know that you have been conditioned into the dominator role without your? You haven't left that. That was the question. And Well, I think, so Bill, I think now I get it different because it's interesting. So how do I feel that I can position without my position? Well, it would have, I think parts of it would have been nice,
And now
like you said, work, because of it, we're comfortable. And it's the first time I've thought about, I guess, the idea of privilege, or privilege.
So people who are speaking, find out what you're sharing, it's lovely, I'm sure all of it was really good and important, because we don't have these conversations. So I want you now, the other person who is listening, to share their feelings about knowing that they've been conditioned into a dominator model. How do you feel about that? Okay.
So,
go ahead,
It's
Al.
interesting, surprised to think of it from that definition. Because, like, for me, there is a lot of good parts that have come out of it, but like, I like what you said, you know, is somebody, if it had been from press, I'm telling you. Given us a desire to live in. I mean, for example,
After you wind up, just take it slow. And I want you to really thank each other for what you just did. I want you to thank each other in any way that you can. Because saying to each other in something like that is really important, and we don't often do it without interrupting. And I plan. Okay, let's all sit down.
You're welcome. Good talking to you.
Okay, let's all sit down. Oh my God, you're a great group. Once you get talking, right? People want to talk about this stuff. We just have to create an environment for it to happen. Okay, I'm going to end this. And that last thing was, what are the costs? And I have a handout on the costs, by the way. We didn't do that. Want to go back? We didn't do that question. What are the costs to us? Because we're often taught that it's good. And if we have a lot of dominant identities, that's good, right? Because we don't talk about what we're paying. My father, who I described to you a little bit, suffered his whole life from feeling isolated from the women in his life. He never truly had a deep relationship with us. And I'm sure in his heart, he longed for that, right? That was a cost that never got talked about. Okay, and there's many costs in our dominant identities. Okay, so what we're going, but I have a handout on it, so you can take that home. This woman is incredible. Read anything you can by her. She's very spiritual. Her name is Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams. For us to transform as a society, we have to allow ourselves to be transformed as individuals. And for us to be transformed as individuals, we have to allow for the incompleteness of any of our truths and a real forgiveness for the complexity of human beings. There's some important words in there: forgiveness, complexity, all of those things. She's brilliant. And she helps us to move forward in all of this. And somebody else, I think Grania used the word transform. That's what it is. Basically, we're transforming. Okay, I'm going to stop here to see if you have any questions about what I just did and what Opening Doors is about. there is a flyer and I also wanted a quick go around of closing.
Yeah,
I
I
wanted to
can
do this.
carry the mic if someone has a
Perfect,
question.
okay. So Carolyn's gonna carry the mic. And when you ask the question, before you turn this off, hold on, I have one more slide that will, I'm gonna, David, just move out of the way for a second. When she goes around, we're also ending with a feeling, a wish, a wonder, appreciation, something that you're taking with you. So if you have, just, you could call that out. All right, David, now, you can turn it off.
Question?
All right, question.
This is, this is a more of a comment than a question. As I look at the excluded column, something that I have been keenly aware of is that being in the excluded column across the board, regardless of which one it is, it causes trauma. And we are talking about trauma that stays with it. It doesn't go away. So even if somebody moves from an excluded group into a dominant group, they bring that trauma with them. That's just my thought.
Brilliant thought. Thank you. And what I didn't say is all our work is trauma informed because of what you just heard. And that we're all carrying not only the trauma of our life currently, but the traumas they're finding out cellularly. So my grandparents in Sicily, who were sulfur miners and treated like beasts of burden, had certain traumas that are still in my cells. Okay, that's really important. Thank you. More time.
I'm afraid we're gonna have to end soon, but what I wanna make sure is that you say something about how we can learn more. Because you have piqued my interest, I'm sure you've piqued all of our interests. Are there books, are there workshops, are there, you know, a couple things that you might recommend as a way to go further with this model?
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, everybody who made this happen today. I started by sharing about opening doors. This is just one workshop of hundreds that are out there right now. We've decided to do it in the way we do it because of how we honor people's journey. But you all need to be on a journey all the time. You could have book clubs here. I could recommend a whole lot of books. You can attend local workshops, 1 hour, 2 hour, a day, whatever, bring more speakers in. All that's really important. The important thing is to not stop. And when I hear somebody say, oh, you know, I don't need that, you know why? I did this workshop about 5 years ago, or I was in a course. Well, whenever people say that to me, it's like, oh, wow, that person really needs it. Because we're never done. I don't care how old you are. I'm going to the grave with all this stuff in me. Because I don't even have time to undo it. Right? So we're on the journey. And oh, the other side of the page on cost is joy. So you're not doing it, which is up here, the handout that you're gonna take. Oh, you got it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, the joy part. Oh my God. As you're undoing it, it is fun. It's not all work. Because now you're that little one connecting to people that you never thought you would connect to in your life, right? In so many ways, right? So there's the joy part of it as well. So that's what I can say is you walk through life always asking how it could be different and then noticing where there's cost and joy.
Kathy, would you be willing to do for example, a day-long workshop as opposed to a 3 or 4 day workshop? I've attended both of those, a 1 day and a 3 day, and a lot of people don't have the option to do the stay at home, the stay overnight thing.
We could talk about it, Grania, our facilitator, the team that I have, I always do those multiracial and multi-gender. So the team I have would have to come into Rochester, so I'd have to find a facilitator who's willing to come,
Okay.
but it's possible.
Because, I just want to say, because the workshops I've taken with you, both the 1 day and 4 day, 3 day, were excellent and really enlightening to me.
And so there's flyers over there about those workshops, but I also brought flyers about this, which is the result of all that work for 5 years of undoing Columbus Day, folks. And please come, it is gonna be a blast where we get to really celebrate the heritage of Italian Americans in Rochester. It's the first of many. And then the other, in partnership with Indigenous people, we have Indigenous People Day coming up on October 9th. I handed so many of these out, I only have one, so I have to take a picture of that one. But there's a lot of these over there, I think. Okay.
I don't want to take the mic from you because you're so interesting and have taught us so much and have so much more to teach us. And
Thank
I
you
think that's
all
clear to
for
all of
being
us, but
here.
thank you so much, Kathy.